Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today I'm going to reflect on this Surah Takathur, 19th of February, just for your record. And there are few references. These are only the few of the references. Here is a contact. Now I'm going to start this presentation. But before going into that, there's a preamble. See, before starting this presentation, I think it will be important to introduce the theme of this surah and the issues to be considered as we proceed. Surah Al-Takathur addresses the following. Number one is need and greed of human beings at individual and collective level. Choices in life, the wrong choices made in this life results in destruction. These destructive results to be certain as conspicuous reality, which are not only be seen in this life, but also in hereafter. Human and societies as nations bear the consequences of their actions. Human beings and nations are provided with bounties, sustenance in abundance, and will be questioned about how these bounties are being utilized. Now, coming to human life and individual, as individual and as nation, their actions and consequences. See, if we take human being as an individual, we have given physical, we have mind given by Allah, and we have given a self. Now, as an individual outside the body or the individual being, there's a physical environment and a behavior which have a direct relationship. On the other hand, when we go from an individual, we multiply and we come across families and we develop societies. And from the societies, we develop into nations. And the nations, once again, have physical environment and there's a culture interacting with each other. And obviously, there is an interdependence between individual and nation. Now, these are the preamble for this surah. So I will start this thing by reciting it. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Al-Hakumut Takasir, Hatta Zurtum al-Mukabir, Kalla Sawfa Ta'lamun, Summa Kalla Sawfa Ta'lamun, Kalla Law Ta'lamuna, Ilmal Yaqeen, Lataravunna al-Jaheem, Summa Lataravunnaha Ayn al-Yaqeen, Summa Latas'alun an-Naim. These are the 8 ayat. Now, first of all, coming into the word, which is al-hakum, I think we should understand it in depth. What does it mean? The root words or the haruf are lam, ha, and waw. This root occurs 16 times in 15 verses in the Quran. And the words like lahu, al-hakum, lahiya, talhihim, lahu, lahab, talhakum, these sort of words are being used in Quran. And the possible meanings are amusement, sports, distracted, diverted, idle tales, pastime, depending upon the context. However, here in this surah, it reflects to divert you, distract you. Now, this lahu and lahab, I think it will be important to understand what is lahu. As the Taj, the dictionary, according to that, lahu means transient pleasure that distract man from important things toward unimportant things or work which has no clear or right direction. Similarly, another one is lahu means work which distract man from important work. Lahu and lahab, for which a man leaves the right path in order to be engaged in transient pleasures, making other word in equivalent of living as an animal level and is not living at a human level. The other word, which is al-takathur, Now, Al-Takasur have three root Kaf, Sa, and Ra. This root occurs 167 times in 162 verses. And the words like Aksaro, Aksarahum, Faksar, Aksarat, Faksar, Kum, Kasirat Takasur, and Al Kausar. So, Inna Ataina Kal Kausar. This is also the root from these. Now, these are possible meanings of Kasara, is most of them many, numerous, greater, competition, increase, depending upon the context. In here, the meaning is taken as a competition to increase mutual rivalry to pile up. However, kasara, which is abundance, refers to a large quantity or plenty of something, typically a resource or a commodity. It can also refer to a state of having more than enough of something, often in terms of wealth, resources, or opportunities. Now, the first ayah is Al-Hakamut Takasir. This means the mutual rivalry of piling up the good things of this world diverts you from the more serious things. Now, that's the literally meaning of that. Please note that in this surah, Allah has conveyed His message addressing directly to human self, which can be taken at both individual or collective level. This point, I need to a little bit more stress that the way Allah has spoken, this is the Wahi from Allah, and it is addressing human being. It has been addressed through the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but when you read it, it can be taken directly, Wahi coming, addressing you as an individual or as a nation. Now, coming to its explanation, the description by Allama Parvez is, O people, he has taken it as a collective level. O people, do you know what makes you oblivious to the real destruction of mankind? The answers are obsession, avarice, and rivalry, each of which tries to excel the other in amassing wealth and greedily acquiring more and more. Whereas Lama Yusuf Ali has explained it in this way. Acquisitions, that is the passion to seeking an increase in wealth, position, the number of adherent or followers or supporters, mass production and mass organization may affect an individual or affect whole societies or nations. Other people's example, rivalry in such things may aggravate the situation. Up to a certain point, it may be good and necessary, but when it becomes inordinate and monopolize attention, it leaves no time for higher things in life. Now, the second ayat, which is Hatta Zurtumul Mukabir, which means until you visit the graves. It has to be taken in context with Al-Hakumut Takasir, which is the mutual rivalry of piling up, diverts you until you visit the graves. It makes one sentence in that way. If you continue your demands to fulfilling only your own needs, then what is acquired would be limited. However, when the motive is to excel over each other, then here can be no limit. In that case, the greedier you become till such time you reach your graves. It's written in by another scholar is explaining this same thing, that is, until the lie down in the graves and leave the pomp and circumstances of an empty life. The importance here, we should remember empty life. The true reality will then appear before you. Why not try to strive for a little understanding of that reality in this very life? Now, the point which has been made in these two ayat is the human need. Human need has been described by one of the psychologists, Abraham Maslow, in a pyramid of needs, different needs that human beings have. Starts from water, warmth, rest, Coming to safety, the next level after once this need is being met, then the safety needs start to appear, which means security and safety. Once that need is dealt with, then another tier starts, which is belongingness and love and need, include the friends, intimate relationships. And once that are being met, then the next one is esteem, accomplishment. When that need is met, then the self-satisfaction need, where achievement wants full potential. At this level, the power start to play a role that politician and top level, whatsoever you call them, they look for belong to this tier because they have all these things already achieved. Now, these two, the initial one, physiological needs and safety needs, are called the basic needs, while the other two, belongingness and love needs and esteem needs, are called psychological needs, whereas self-fulfillment need is the top tier. Allah has dealt with these human needs by providing resources in abundance. The stress is in abundance. Basic need, Allah as Rabb or sustainer through the system of Rububiyyat has systems in place for all that human physiological and safety needs. Just like there's abundance of food, the crop you grow, put one seed and you get 70 times. Similarly, safety need, the environment is provided, the whole of the stratosphere and other things which protect the whole of the human beings. Similarly, psychological and self-fulfillment need, both of psychological and self-fulfillment needs relates to human mind and its cognitive processes, whereas self-fulfillment need may require external guidance to assist them. Allah has bestowed appropriate mental faculties, which are cognitive processes, to every human being. Balanced cognitive processes can fulfill these categories of need. Furthermore, Quran as a source of external guidance can assist these needs to strike a balance in life. Now just look into needs and greeds. Allah has provided His bounties, resources in abundance to the needs of human beings. Human systems at individual and collective level requires a delicate balance between these resources and needs for sustainability. Now, this word sustainability is nowadays a very big word in academics and issues. We'll come to it later. Now, greed creates unbalance between resources and needs. Greed is applicable to all levels of human needs, basics, psychological, and self-actualization. Greed affects at both individual and collective, that means societal level. Just having a very quick look on effects of greed happens on both individual and societal level, and you will see the first phrase is unequal distribution of wealth. That means rich become richer and poor become poorer. Now, most of the problem in this world, if you analyze, doesn't matter which society you live in, that creates these issues which are related to unequal distribution of wealth. And the need and greed is a basic component behind it. Other phrase which we hear is civilized world versus uncivilized world, or third world as a result of greed. The terms like superpowers is due to this need and greed phenomenon. Another phenomenon which is very current in this time is global warming, and that is due to fossil fuels used without thinking about CO2 emissions. Poverty, 2/3 of population is working for 1/3 of population of rich nations. That is also due to the needs and greed, the unbalance which is there. Slavery, economic slavery of nation. Previously, it was one or two or few people, few hundreds persons were taken as slaves. But now all of the nations are being kept as slaves. They are working as a full nation on a very, very low wages. And then there's a technological misuse, creating wars, media control, mass indoctrination, intellectual supremacy like Facebook, Twitter, and where they actually create a certain trends. And that is due to having a control over the others. And these all have these basic phenomena of need and greed. They're unbalanced. The third verse is Kalla Sawfa Ta'lamun. But nay, you soon shall know the reality. This is not something which cannot be comprehended. If you think of this dispassionately, you would soon realize how destructive this attitude is. Now, if you read it with the context of the first two ayah, At-Taka, Al-Hakamut Takasir Hatta Zurtumul Mukabir, and then Kalla Sawfa Ta'lamun. Now, please note that the use of word Kalla, that means but nay, that is a style of addressing that stresses the point as a counter argument that somebody is saying that, no, hold on, I mean this thing. If you don't know or believe, you will soon know the result of whatever you have been doing. Similarly, here the word sof, which means soon, reflect here the short span of this life before death. And that is also important, that very soon, Allah hasn't given that, oh, it will be after death or that. It's a very soon, that is the lifespan. Now, the last word, which is talamun, is a very important to understand. And in the coming few slides, I'm going to explain its meaning. Talamun, as you have highlighted in the red, is three root letters and lam mim. This root occurs 854 times in 728 verses in Quran. And the words like Elam, knowledge, Al-Alim, all-knowing, Ulama, scholars, Lil Alamin, universes, Malum, to know, and Malumat, information. These are the words which are being used in Quran, and there are, as 850 times it came. Now, knowledge refers to the information, understanding, and skills that a person has acquired through experience, education, or study. It encompasses a wide range of topics, including facts, concepts, theories, and practical skills. Few categories of knowledge. There's a declarative knowledge, which means facts and information such as names, dates, and definitions. Procedural knowledge, how to perform a task or procedure, how to ride a bike or solve a math problem. Conceptual knowledge, understanding of the relationship between different ideas and concepts, such as how different scientific theories relate to one another. There are more categories, but here I have just mentioned three of that. Now, characteristic of knowledge, it is important to understand that what knowledge actually means. Knowledge is always cultural. That is, it forms culture. It's a big statement that it forms culture. Just have to keep in mind. It is usually capable of being spoken and transmitted through language. So without language, it's very difficult to define what are the characteristics of knowledge. It guides thinking, behavior, and decision-making processes of human beings. It is a complex phenomenon, strong-minded by biological, psychological, and social variables. So it's a huge thing. We can discuss it later on. Now, what is knowledge? I have prepared a simple schematics. Like initially we have, as a human being, we receive data through our five senses, or vision, oral, which is hearing, olfactory, smelling, taste, touch, haptic. Now that comes all that information from our sensor as a data, which are sensory data. Then that sensory data goes to our mind or brain. in terms of perception and memory. Now, whatsoever goes into our mind is, or in the memory, is through those data. And then from that information, knowledge is being created with the concepts and the cognitive processes working over manipulating that information and interpreting that information. So basically, it's a sort of pyramid where data is all on the base, then data creates information, and then information creates knowledge. Now, let's see a bit of what level of knowledge. This is the same diagram. I have shown it to you. Now, the information and knowledge, these two categories are basically, they involve cognitive processes. And there are three levels: basic level, medium level, and high level of cognitive processes. Let's see what happens at the basic level. Like feeling hungry, you look for food, it's automatic thing. But there are cognitive processes which works in your mind. You might not be aware of that, but they are working all the time. There's a thinking process that if you're feeling hungry, there is some stimuli which goes and then stomach creates something on, you look for the food. Feeling fearful, look for protection. Feeling cold, get warmth. There are subconscious or some are conscious level. There's inherited information there or processing there, which are all genetic, and it's called the reticulate. Similarly, when you go into medium level, here the thinking processes start, which is a little bit higher level of cognitive processes where business thinking, managerial thinking, mathematical thinking, formal education, scientific education. These involve quite a lot of cognitive processes. However, when we look into the little bit higher level, at this level, the cognitive processes goes more and more complicated, like thinking about thinking. The phenomenons like human self, beingness, and thinking itself. Then discussions about what are values, ethics, virtues, and obviously thinking, and resulting in like artificial intelligence or whatsoever you call it. These involve the higher level. Now that's just a description of knowledge so that you have we have an understanding of this word talamun. Now we come to the fourth ayat, which is Summa Kalla Sofa Talamun. It comes from the third ayat, which is Kalla Sofa Talamun, and now Summa Kalla Sofa Talamun. But here again, you soon shall know. Yet the last ayat is repeated with the stress of word Summa. Again, that is an assuring fact that you will soon come to know. The question here is that what is that these verses are pointing us to know? Are these pointing to the choices of life? Are these pointing to the condition oneself is in due to the wrong choices of life? Are these pointing to the results of the choices that have been made in the journey of life? Or is it about the purpose of life you have been seeking? Now, there's not a clear-cut answer to this question, but we can debate it in our discussion session. Now, coming to the ayat number 5. Kalla law ta'lamuna ilmal yaqeen means, nay, were you to know the certainty of mind, you would beware. In this verse, Allah has introduced another level of knowledge, which we can say verification of the knowledge you already have. This verification is called the certainty of knowledge or yaqeen. Now, if you know that talamun, there is an ilm, and now it's ilmul yaqeen, so it's a double, which is certification of ilm. Three kinds of yaqeen, certainty of knowledge, are described in Quran. The first is certainty of mind or inference mentioned here. We hear from someone or we infer from something we know. This refers to our own state of mind. If we instruct our mind in this way, we should value and deeper things of life better and not waste all our time in ephemeral things. But if we do not use our reasoning faculties now, we shall yet see with our own eyes the penalty of for our sins. It will be certainty of sight. We shall see. This is by Yusuf Ali, a small excerpt from a saying, a description. The sixth ayat is Latarawun al Jaheem. You shall certainly see hellfire. If you apply your mind, now keep in mind all those five ayats before this ayat. If you apply your mind and seriously think about it, you would see with your own eyes the Jahannam toward which this life is taking you. And there are three references of other surahs and ayats. Another description is of the same thing is in which you find yourself now, the hell on earth, brought about by a fundamentally wrong mode of life, an allusion to the gradual destruction of man's natural environment, as well as to the frustration, unhappiness, and confusion which an overriding, unrestrained pursuit of economic growth is bound to bring, and has indeed brought in our time upon a mankind that is about to lose the remnant of all religious orientation. Now, this word al-Jahim has been used, and I would like to go a little bit deeper into that. Jaheem has a root alphabet Jim, Ha, and Mim. This root occurs 26 times in 26 verses. Now, it's been explained like this. Quran has used this word for the state of hell. These are a few of the references here. Quran has given the results of wrongdoing as the fire of hell because it burns everything to ashes. If the purpose of life is considered in the light of Quran, it will be obvious that this worldly life is a link in the chain of development, and this progress has a long way yet to travel. In following the divine law, human being reaches a certain level of progress and development eventually in the hereafter. But if its capabilities are not able to travel the distance, then it is not able to reach that level. It becomes to halt. Keep in mind, it becomes to halt. That is mean. This is the fundamental rule of the natural progress. This halting is referred to Quran as al-Jahim, which fundamentally means to come to a halt. Al-Jahimu, hence, is the last stop on the path of its journey. And because this heat of realization is so intense, it burns the heart. It's another surah, 104. To the extent that it will turn its dreams to ashes. According to Quran, an individual or a nation that comes to such a halt, that place is called Jaheem. Life is a continuous flow that has to keep on flowing. But the flow which comes to a halt start getting stale. Now coming to the ayat number 7, which is Summa latarawunnaha ainal yaqeen. Now here the word latarawunna taro, that means you'll see. Again, you shall see it with certainty of sight. Ainal yaqeen, certainty of sight. In this verse, the fact is stressed again that for sure the result of the bad choices will become visible and will be witnessed by your own eyes. This certainty by seeing, that is evidence-based, will happen in this life as the results start to manifest themselves. This manifestation is more visible in the later age of life. In the hereafter, through a direct, unequivocal insight into the real nature of one's past doing and into inescapability of the suffering upon himself for a wrong, by a wrong, wasteful use the boon of life. Now, this word which is used, anil yaqeen, we need to look into a little bit more closer. It means certainty. And in this surah, there are two levels of certainties level are mentioned. One is anil yaqeen and other one is ilmul yaqeen. Now, if we analyze that anil yaqeen is a database certainty, obviously it comes from our senses, which is ayn, and then ilmul yaqeen, which is knowledge-based certainty. And it's not a hierarchy, but ilmul yaqeen can once again work and ask for the anil yaqeen to reassert. Other thing, which is the level of reality in Quran, that are shown as three levels: ainul yaqeen, ilmul yaqeen, and haqqul yaqeen. That are the three levels mentioned in Quran. Mind it, in this surah is only two levels are mentioned. Ainul yaqeen is data-based knowledge, and ilmul yaqeen is knowledge-based certainty, and haqqul yaqeen is highest level of certainty, which is basically reality or haqq, or the truth in some of the time. But haqq and reality are actually have a better understanding than the truth. In ayat 69, 51, وَإِنَّهُ لَحَقُّ الْيَقِينِ is that is a level of surety or the yaqeen has been mentioned in Quran. Now, as I have mentioned that this relate to the base level, and the same thing it can go in iteration to consult each other. Now, coming to the last ayat of the surah, Summa latus'alanna yawma izin anan na'im. Then shall you be questioned that day about the joy. An-na'im is the joy. Tas'aluna is question. At that time, you will be questioned about the bounties the Almighty had bestowed for the nourishment of mankind, but which you collected to satisfy your own greed. You will also be asked whose toils and blood it was that decorated your palaces of joy and pleasure, and what right you had to use them up. Let's see that, have a closer look on this word, an-na'im. An-na'im has three basic roots: noon, ain, and mim. This root occurs 140 times in 132 verses. The word like anam, anamana, anamta, anaman, benema, al-anam, and their possible meanings according to the context are favors, blessing, bounties, delight, pleasure, pleasant things. Now let's see once again that to revisit the human being. Human being, as mentioned earlier, have three basic faculties. We got physical body, we got mind, and we have human self. That has been mentioned earlier and will be used further on. In terms of the name or the bounties Allah has given in the physical bodies, just see that genetic information of all of our previous ancestors, strength we are given, mobility, independence, that we as a unit can live independent of everything else, senses, bodily system, defense, beauty, proportion, sleep, skills we can acquire, and so on. There are so many other things which are related to physical bodies. Those are the bounties, the namas Allah has given. Secondly, in the faculty of mind, cognitive system, problem solving, memory, thinking, knowledge processing, intelligence, wisdom, and with the combination of both of these, physical body and mind, the language, that sort of concept and other things. They are the bounties Allah has given to human being. And the third one is actually the human self, that personality plus I. Now, human self in itself is a huge subject, and we will discuss it maybe in another presentation. But here, if that some of the aspect of human self is experiences, emotion, ethics, empathy, love, guidance. These are the human few of the bounties Allah has given to human beings. But mind it, there is outside the human beings, we live in a physical environment, and see what are the bounties Allah have provided us. Bounties like water, rain, oceans, rivers, mountains, trees, woods, atmosphere, air, light, materials and minerals. There are so many of that. Flora and fauna of every kind. The temperature we live in, it's an adjusted one. Allah has given us foods, crops, fruit, vegetables. Then Allah has made continents and regions for different climate and minerals. Day and night Allah has created for us. Shelter, stars and planets and constellations, these are all bounties of Allah which has been given to us. And now keep in mind, these bounties, they are given in abundance to our needs. So that's a message which is coming indirectly through this surah. Now, human being, a very important aspect within this is the definition of life. That when we talk about purpose of life, we have to define life. I will call it one aspect, which is basically life before death. I'm abbreviating its LBD is life before death. Now, before we die, that's the point of line. We are coming to a death in this world. And then there's a life, which I'm calling it life after death, LAD, but they both are life. Life before death is a characteristic of organism that distinguish them from non-living. While some aspect of person's conscious or self continues to exist after the physical body dies. So just keep in mind when we discuss life, what does it mean? Are we just defining the life LBD or we are defining the life LAD? However, life is a continuum. Life is not with the death or after death. Life is a continuum. So defining the whole life is an existence, which is self, that transcends time with not known beginning or end. Life before death is a phase and death is not the end. So if we talk about life, that is a full continuum of life. If we talk about define the life, somebody defined the life just up till this line of death. But it's important that I should clarify this thing. Now coming into the purpose of life, we can actually now define what is the purpose of life. So have defined, distinguished, or rather create some groups. There are few people who thinks this is the only life, so enjoy this life. As you have to live only once. And there's a saying in Persian, Babar ke alam dubara means that this world is not never come back again. So this is the only word. Some people live their life as a purpose. Some people live their life to be rich. It doesn't matter how you get rich. Money can buy anything. So that's the purpose of life. And some people don't have any specific purpose, but to spend the day, that is today, and tomorrow will be seen or dealt tomorrow. So they have no any specific purpose, but they just live day to day. Now this group, just keep in mind, has no belief in accountability and hereafter. So that's important, that this group will have no belief in accountability or here life after death. Group 2, there are people whose purpose of life is personal development. This category encompasses aspects of self-improvement such as education, self-care, personal growth, and physical health. There are other people whose purpose is relationships. This domain includes the formation and maintenance of social connections such as family, friends, romantic partner, and professionals. network. There is another group called careers and work. For many people, work is a central aspect of their purpose in life and can include goals such as financial stability, career advancement, or making a positive impact on the life. Creativity and leisure. This category include hobbies, creative pursuits, and other leisure activities that bring joy and fulfillment. Service and community. This domain encompasses the desire to make a positive impact and the world through volunteer work, community services, activism, and other forms of civic engagement. I've called this group as they basically believe in there may or may not be a hereafter or accountability. So they might think that there will be a hereafter, they might think no, might not be hereafter. The third group, however, is the religion group. For some, finding meaning and purpose in their religious belief is an important aspect of their life purpose. In this, salvation plays a big role. And one of the group of salvation, they think that already promised to have salvation. Like Christians, they say, oh, they are going directly. Jews, as well as a higher nation, they will just go directly into heavens after death. They do believe into that. And some of the religious leader will be, they think that in the life after death, religious leader will be there to recommend them for the salvation. Similarly, there are religions like Hinduism and the other samsara, which is a cycle of death and rebirth, and then eventually moksha, which is liberation. They will eventually enter into or meet with the God eventually. This group, which is number 3, it believes in hereafter, but not accountability in hereafter. There's no accountability because they will just eventually find the purpose. The fourth group, which I've put here, is a deen with hidayah. Now in Quran, Surah Asr, a part of that is إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Allah has defined these 4 characteristics. And in whole of the Quran, there are so many other verses which define, but I have chosen only one of them to show you here. Have faith and do righteous deeds and join together in the mutual teaching of truth and patience and constancy. And all of those hidayah which are given in Quran is about the development of self. Now, this group, which is 4, is belief in hereafter and accountability. Now, if I summarize this whole 4 groups, the first group, second, third, and fourth. The first is no belief in accountability in hereafter, life after death. Second group, they may or may not believe in hereafter accountability. Third group believes in hereafter, but no accountability in hereafter. And the fourth group, which believe in hereafter and accountability. Now here comes the important thing. This fourth group is related with the group number 2. See, that may or may not be. If you believe in hereafter, this group has to comply with these developments. These are not alien to them. So that's about the purpose of life, which was important, I thought that should include. Now coming to the purpose of life, which is life in this world, let's see the span of this life. It's birth, childhood, adulthood, then we involve in families and societies, then it comes the old age, and then the death. And that was life before death and life after death. Doesn't matter who believes into it or not, but that's the life cycle everyone is going through. Some of us at the old age, when they reach, they have a lot, abundance of things they have collected. But what will happen eventually is death. The question comes, what we get out of this life. Now, this life means life before death. This is just a illustration to show you the life, and it creates questions. And especially in the light of this surah, you have to reflect on it by yourself in your own time. Now, let's see life without purpose in the light of this surah and this illustration. See, that's human being, individual, and we have three faculties. Al-Hakum at-Takathur. If our aim or purpose is distracted and diverted purpose, the surah is saying, Allah is saying, and with the kasur, piling up worldly, whatsoever is the knowledge, properties, children, gains, fames, riches, valuable power, these are the bounties Allah provided. What happens? You come to a point, now here you find, mind it, this is before death, mostly in the old age, a pit, a stop here, which is Allah has called Al-Jaheem, or the fire, hellfire, blazing fire, or that where everything stops. And Allah has said that you will see it by your eyes, and the yaqeen will be there within this life. This is not beyond the life after death. That is within this life, you will see that. And if you see these three faculties, the mind will stop here near the death. The physical body will obviously will be dead. But the third important thing, which is human self, will just stop here. That's the halt, that's the stagnancy, and it will be undeveloped self. Now, that's a brief illustration of whatsoever in these 8 ayat Allah has actually tried to show. Now, coming to the purpose of life, the same illustration, human life, life in this world and the death. Now, if Allah has provided us with Al-Kawthar, which is so much of abundance, all that are named, the name of Allah has provided, knowledge, resources, whatsoever is there. We have given the mind faculty. Obviously, mind cannot go beyond that. Physical body cannot go beyond this line. But there's a human self. If our purpose of life is going with Al-Kawthar and in the line of Hidayah, then what will happen? Our self will be a developing self. At this level, the word Allah has used is An-Nafsul Mutmainna, or satisfied self. And mind it, this self will continue going beyond death, and that is the developed self. So it will continue, and that's the difference between purpose of life, living a life with purpose, and the previous one, the slide which I've shown, is when you don't have a purpose or a diverted or distracted purpose, then what will happen? Now, coming to the nearly end of this surah, there are few issues which I have covered. Are higher purpose of life, which is Quranic, compete in goodness, which is there. Abundance of resources provided by Allah, names by Allah in this life, that is covered. Choices of unnecessary and vain worldly life, diverting attention from real matters, obsessions, materialism, avarice, greed, acquisitiveness, monopolies, power, authority, unfruitful discussion, thinkings, and acts. Law of requital, that whatsoever you do, you are going to get the results of these. Short span of life in this world, which is actually the law of respite. So law of requital, law of respite, both. Jaheem, we have seen that Allah has shown it is Jahannam is not the concept coming after the death, but within this life, you are bound to see the Jaheem with your own eyes if your choices are not right. We have discussed death, hereafter, and accountability, and nature and levels of knowledge and level of certainty. These are the few of the issues we have tried to cover in that. Obviously, there are quite a lot beyond that. That comes to my presentation for this surah up till now, and thank you very much for your time and for sharing this today. And please feel free to share it with your contacts. You may like to subscribe to the future talk related to Quranic system of theme, and that's the contact address. You are more than welcome to attend. Thank you very much once again.